Hello everyone. In this video tutorial, made with the 2019 version of Substance Painter, we will examine the light generator, with a practical example. I will therefore take for granted some topics, such as generators and map baking. I covered these topics in some previously published video tutorials, all listed, in order, in the Substance Painter playlist. The light generator allows us to create a layer mask by simulating the projection of some light rays from a point of the virtual universe towards the objects placed in the scene, just like a sun or a directional light in the virtual universe, so it can be used to generate directional masks, i.e., white in the points hit from the front by the rays and gradually darker, but be careful not to be fooled by the name of the generator, light. These rays generate the layer mask only and have no effect on the color of the objects or on the lighting of the scene. These are completely different effects. I'm going to show you immediately the basic aspect of a mask generated with light, with a practical example. I inserted an object, a toro, traditional Japanese lantern, and I provided it with a concrete plain brushed material. Now I add an Iceland snow material on top of the material layers stack. The idea is to add the snow material only to some parts of the object, those most exposed to a snowfall. But obviously at this moment the new material completely covers the first one. We therefore need a mask. I then add a black layer mask to the snow material, then right-click on the mask and add a light generator. There is something wrong. The generated mask is completely white and the new material covers the one below. At a glance, we notice that a couple of maps are missing, in the Properties tab of the generator. So I click on Bake Mesh Maps in Texture Set Settings and have Substance create at least the two maps that interest us, World Space Normal and Position, in this case. World Space Normal collects information on the orientation of the various faces of the object in the virtual universe, while Position collects information on their coordinates, height, in particular. These two maps are used by the light generator to determine to what extent the faces of the object will be affected, based on their orientation in the scene and their height. As regards the orientation, in fact, we can vary the direction of the light rays of light with horizontal angle and vertical angle, in the Properties tab of the generator, while information on the coordinates, stored in the Position map. They are useful for modifying the light attenuation parameter, as we can decide whether to affect the lower parts of the geometry to a lesser extent. Although the effect of the generator on the mask, and, therefore, on the application of the material, is clearly visible in material mode in the 3D view, especially if you activate and deactivate the Iceland snow material. To notice the differences, I recommend to switch to mask mode, after selecting the layer mask, because, in my opinion, it allows you to better understand where and with what intensity the light rays of the light generator hit, by modifying the two parameters relating to the inclination and the light attenuation factor. With the mask display mode it is also possible to directly observe the effect of the two parameters, highlight glossiness and highlight level, which allow us to amplify or attenuate the intensity of the lighting, and, therefore, the gray levels of the mask generated, which in turn translate into more or less marked applications of the associated material, even on the faces not directly affected by the light rays. The light generator therefore has few parameters, but which allow a fair degree of flexibility in the application of the effect. I therefore invite you to think of other possible examples of use of this generator. Unfortunately, not all that glitters is gold. The light generator does not take into account any occlusions of the object itself, so we notice that even the surface inside the lantern is influenced by its rays. Light, in fact, is based on the orientation of the faces of the geometry, and those inside the lantern are still oriented upwards. To manually exclude those faces we can proceed in various ways. One of these consists, for example, in including the snow material in a group, initially providing a white layer mask to the group, and then manually excluding the areas that do not interest us, for example with a brush or a tool polygonal selection, UV chunk fill, in my case, obviously set to 0, to make the UV islands of the mask on which I click black. Finally, as with any other generator, it is possible to supply filters and other effects to light. For example, we can add a blur filter to blur the edges of the mask and make the border areas less sharp if we see fit. Well, that's all for this tutorial too. As usual, I invite you to express doubts, questions or requests for clarification in the comments to the video, on YouTube.